Welcome to Hemmings Road to Improvement, our new road trip series where we take an old school vehicle and, with the help of some of the biggest names in the SEMA universe, update it over a 3,500-mile cross-country journey to benefit the children that SEMA Care seeks to help on a daily basis.
Welcome to Road to Improvement Extra. I'm Mike Austin, and I'm here talking with Mike Musto about Road to Improvement, the new show from Hemmings, where he took a 1981 Chevy Suburban, drove it across the country, and upgraded it as he went along. We're going to talk about behind the scenes, what Mike was thinking, some of the stuff you might not get in the episode, and hopefully, get some good stories out of it. Mike, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm really good. I'm stoked that the series is finally aired. We've got our first episode up, and it was one hell of an experience. It was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you taped this back in May. I'm excited, too, because it's the first of this new batch of videos we have coming out on Hemmings, first sort of really rolling out the YouTube channel. You recorded this back in May. It's been a long wait.
Oh, yeah.
Does it feel good?
Yeah, it feels really good. I mean, we recorded this over, it was actually 22 days on the road. We started in April, finished in May, and it was an undertaking because, honestly, it was a road trip show, it was a build show, it was a travel show. There were so many different components in it, and we had never seen a show like this done before. I had never seen a show like this. And because of that, I was like, well, what can we do that's different, that has never been done? And so we created Road to Improvement, and it turned out really is a hell of a lot of fun, especially with all the sponsors involved, and obviously Elana Sherr, who was the co-host, who's just amazing in her own right. Just a great time and a lot of fun.
So the first episode, if you're watching this and you haven't watched the episode, go watch the episode. We're going to talk about what happens here. No major spoilers, but you'd be better off watching the full episode. Yeah. First, in this one, it's just getting started. We meet you and Elana, and we meet the truck. So let's start there. We've talked a little bit. Suburban trucks are cool. It's a big car. It's very upgradable. But talk about not just picking the Suburban, but all of the other logistics, right? You got it in Michigan, which worked out, but what were you going to do? Was the location a key part in we got to find a car, but we got to find a car in the right place?
So the location wasn't really a key part in as much as it was finding the right vehicle. And one of the things, since we are Hemmings, one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to find it from kind of in our own interior, right? So we went to our classified section, we looked at what was available, and we found this big, it's an ex-Forest Service truck at a place called GR Auto Gallery in Michigan, just outside of Grand Rapids. And it was kind of the perfect vehicle. I mean, what I was looking for was something that was big, that was easily upgradable, that we could somewhat use as a pack mule, but that was also as really as bare bones as you could possibly find, so you could upgrade it, and that the upgrades that we were going to do would be difficult but not over the top, right? And that was one of the issues. So the Suburban, it's a 1981 Chevrolet Suburban. It is a stripper. I'm talking, total stripper.
There's no headliner. I was I thought about this, wait a minute. They sold the truck without a headliner in 81? That's the level of work truck in 81?
Yeah, I think it was, like I said, it was a Forest Service truck, so no headliner, vinyl floor mats, only had heat, roll-up windows, 4-speed manual with a granny low, just as vinyl bench seats, as basic gets. There were the only luxury item literally was heat. We didn't have any gauges. We had a speedometer and a fuel gauge, but then the rest were idiot lights. No tack, no amp meter, no anything. So as far as that goes, yeah, I don't even the back window is manual. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
But even the tailgate window, you mean?
The tailgate window is manual, which is the greatest thing in the world. It's my favorite part of the
crazy.
truck.
So does it even have a shift light? No shift light. You just guess?
Oh no shift light. No shift light and no tack. So you have no idea how, when we first got it, we didn't know how fast we were spinning the motor because we didn't know what gears were in it. So, it's 70 miles an hour where we're spinning 3,000 RPMs, 4,000 RPMs. It came to pass that we did find out it had 373 gears in it. But yeah, it was a completely untested bare bones truck. When we picked it up, it had 94,000 miles on it, or original miles, which is pretty cool.
So you pick it up, and GR Auto Gallery generally, at least from the listings, look like they have good stuff. The truck worked out, but you see it the first time in person, and you drive it about an hour over to Lansing to your friend's shop, Kevin Wesley's. So what was your first impression when you saw the car up close versus seeing it in the photos?
So when we had first seen it, it was pretty much what I really wanted, right? It wasn't a perfect vehicle by any means. And one of the things that we wanted to accomplish with the show was to show people that you don't have to go out and spend $1 million on a project vehicle, or on any vehicle for that matter, right? So it was for us, it was the bones, right? Was this a good mechanical vehicle? And it was. Like the truck, the paint is completely faded out. It's got, some dings in it, some dents here and there. But all in all, it was all there, and it was always maintained. But when you talk about a 40-year-old vehicle with only 90,000 miles, that means it hasn't been driven a lot. And we were literally, we jumped in it and took something that was driven probably more in the first day than it had been in the previous, I want to say, 5 years of its lifetime, which is crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, the general premise, too, like you were saying, though, is like, you don't have to take a car and say this is going to be a project, and you park it, and then you're done. This is like, it's ready to drive. If you had bought this yourself, instead of doing the road trip, you could be doing all the stuff we did, as you went, right? Like
absolutely.
You don't need to have a perfect car, but you also don't need to put a car up on blocks to upgrade it.
Oh, no, not at all. I think, the whole premise was, with Road to Improvement, my biggest problem with build shows as they stand is that you see a vehicle, you see it upgraded with 1 billion parts over the course of a series, right? Whether it's 5 episodes, 10 episodes, but then you never see the vehicle again. So for us, I was like, well, we can do this. It's ambitious, but we can absolutely upgrade the vehicle while we're on the road, and then it's proof of concept of the parts, right? Do the parts work? Do they improve the vehicle? So we essentially did 3 years worth of upgrades in like 22 days. And we tested them. Like, they are road-proven parts that we put on this thing, and it was taking a 40-year-old vehicle and bringing it into the 21st century so that it could perform in today's day and age.
Right. So, and before this episode, we don't get to the upgrades yet. You take it over for, like I said, you kind of do a shakedown run, and then you give it the once-over. It doesn't even make it to the garage,
No,
right?
no. So, when we first got it, we jumped in it, and we were all happy. Like, we got in it, started, ran good, and we're driving it, and then all of a sudden, one of the idiot lights came on, the alternator light came on. And if anybody has ever driven a car with just idiot lights, the truck's already broken when the light comes on. It's not like it gives you an idea that stuff's going bad. Like, if the light comes on, you're already screwed. So we had found out within the first 35 miles on our way to Kevin Wesley's shop, Wesley Motorsports in Lansing, that it was basically a new alternator that had just kicked the bucket. It was dead before we even started rolling. And that was a little unnerving because that's not the way you want to start off like a 3,500-mile road trip.
Well, and that was my question, because you had a loose battery cable, and I was like, oh man, like I'm always pretty cavalier about this stuff. I would like to think at this point, given what I know about cars, I would check the alternator, but I'm the kind of guy that'd be like, oh, we tightened up the battery, it's running again, let's go.
Well, that's what we essentially thought, but it wasn't actually. Yes, the battery cable was loose, but the alternator was actually bad. It was a bad alternator. We checked it; it wasn't charging. So, because obviously the first thing was, okay, battery cable's loose, that's probably the culprit. But then we put a multimeter on it, and it just wasn't charging. So we literally, within the first 50 miles, we had to start replacing parts. And that, again, this was day one of a 22-day road trip. Within the first 4 hours, and already the thing had just kind of crapped out, and we were like, oh, this isn't good.
So what's Elana saying when you get to Wesley and you guys figure out that you have to do the alternator and you're going to do a couple other things? How is she dealing with it?
Alana is like as cool. She's as cool as a cucumber, man. She's just like, okay, like we'll just fix it and we'll move on. But she has the beauty of what Elana does is she has been driving and she's been around old cars for so long. She knows old vehicles. She just doesn't get flustered, which is great. It's like if a problem comes up, she's like, all right, man, let's just fix it. Let's just see what it is. So that as a co-host and a co-driver and a friend is a wonderful thing because it kind of helps put your mind at ease a little bit, right? When somebody is there going, just relax, calm down, like this is okay. So she was absolutely fantastic with it. She was great.
So, and you did all the driving this episode, right? Like, when does she get? How much does she drive? When did she get to drive?
The first episode, I drove the entire episode because my whole thing was, I wanted to make sure that this thing first was drivable. Two, I wanted to figure out anything that was wrong with the truck from a drivability standpoint before she got behind the wheel. And meaning, if you hit the brakes, did it pull to the right? Did it pull to the left? Was the alignment off? Did the carburetor stumble? How did it accelerate? How did it handle? And before, I think, and I mean, you have old vehicles. Before you hand off an old vehicle to somebody, to anybody, you want to give them an idea of what it's actually like to drive, especially something that's, essentially 6,000 pounds, right? It's not like we're driving a new Corolla. We're driving this massive built Suburban down the street, which has a presence all its own. So yeah, but the first day alone was over 600 miles. So yeah, that was a long day.
That's after when you guys set out after shaking the thing down, right?
Yeah. So when we picked the truck up at GR Auto Gallery, it was about 60 miles to Kevin Wesley's shop in Lansing, and then we thought we were going to be in and out at Kevin's in like an hour. Like, we figured we'd go to Kevin's, he'd put it up on the lift, he'd be like, all right, this is good, this is bad, let's tweak this, or whatever the case is. And then we found a whole bunch of stuff, like the alternator crapped out, and like the ground strap was loose. And then we opened the radiator, and that looked like a chocolate milk or a green milkshake. So that turned from an hour into being like 4 or 5 hours. So our next stop was Rockford, Illinois, which was 600 miles away. We didn't leave until 5:30, and we had 600 plus miles to go. So I was just like, oh shit. So we literally we just hit the road and we just drove, and we crossed our fingers and headed out into the middle of the night, and we're like, okay, let's see what happens, and knock on wood. That was as torture tested as you could get for a truck that hadn't been driven in years. So
you fixed the alternator, you fixed the ground strap, you looked at the frothy coolant and said, this is probably going to be okay. What do you have any other like road trip talismans? Like, do you dump some fuel cleaner in the car, or like, do you bring a quart of oil with you just to be lucky, or are you guys just kind of
yes? No. So when we picked it up from the dealer, we had no tools, we had no anything. At Kevin's, I had said, once we had to replace the alternator, I was like, all right, when I go to the auto parts store, I'm just getting everything. And as somebody who's road tripped old cars across the country a dozen times or so, like 40, 50-year-old cars, I have what I call, in any one of my cars, I have what I call my oh shit kit. And my oh shit kit is anytime a part breaks, it makes me go, oh shit. I buy that part and I throw it in the kit, right? So like my 68 Charger, for instance, I have a box in the back with every part that's ever failed me. And so I have an extra alternator, I have an extra fuel pump, I have plug wires, I have this, I have that, I have this. And that's what we tried to do with this Suburban. So anytime something let us down, we would go to the store and we'd buy something. So that first 600-mile run, extra alternator, extra fuel pump, extra radiator hoses, cleaners, fluids, all of that stuff that you're like, okay, if something goes south on the side of the road, we'll probably be able to get ourselves to, at least a safe location. So, yeah.
All right. So take us back to the episode. You have a frothy radiator. The alternator's good to go. What are you thinking about like the next 20 days? Are you thinking, man, this is going to be great, or are you like, I guess we'll see?
The first day was really trial by fire, and the issue was, again, this was a really, really ambitious stuff, because what people don't understand is when you're doing a production, when you're filming something, it's not just you in this vehicle. It's you, it's your co-driver or co-host, it's your crew, which is following us in a minivan, right? It's feeding everybody, and it's hotels, and it's every little thing you could think of. You're not just going point A to point B. You're going point A to point B with 6 to 8 people along for the ride that are counting on you to do the production and make the arrangements and do all of that stuff, right? So it's a big thing when you've got people in tow. Then you're talking about, the hours that you work. People, you're not working an 8-hour day. There's no such thing as an 8-hour day when you do production. A standard day is a 12-hour day. Okay? If you're lucky, you're getting 5 hours of sleep a night, which is crazy.
Well, and there's some movie magic involved too, right? You're doing a road trip. Yeah, you can go stop for gas, stop for food. You guys are, you're filming as you go, which is nice, but, the SD card dies or something happens. You got to stop and you got to change it. How much movie magic was involved here? Like, are they taking those passing exterior shots as you go, or is it like, okay, we're at a stop, while we're here, we got to get a couple extra shots in? Like the conversations. How much of the conversation was like, oh man, I screwed that up? I know I take a lot of takes. How much of that's movie magic?
Surprisingly not that much. Like, so for instance, all the in-car stuff is in-car. We have cameras rigged in the vehicle, and then we have our camera guys in the other vehicles that are shooting us while we're on the road. So if we found a great location, for instance, sure, we would stop, we would take some great, video montages, and we would have an idea of, okay, this is such a wonderful place. But it's not like stuff was really scripted. We don't script anything. We have a loose, kind of a loose idea of what we want to do. But the fact of the matter is, everything is off the cuff, because that's how a road trip works. Like, you see stuff and you react to it, which is why you have cameras rolling all the time. Now, that's good and that's bad. It's good because you really don't miss anything as far as any type of action or as far as some great conversation. But when you have cameras rolling all the time, that is tons and tons of footage that at the end of a production, the editors have to go through and say, okay, let's look for that one thing. And then they'll come back to us and say, hey, did you guys talk about this? And we'll say, yeah, we did talk about that. And I think we were like at this point on the road. And so go back and look at this footage. There are so many moving parts in it that it's big. It's a big deal.
So then what did we miss in this first episode? It's about 18, 19 minutes long. It goes quick. I've watched it a couple times. But what's not in there?
I think a lot of stuff, like when you're on the road, especially at night, like, when the sun goes down, you could get some conversation, but the fact of the matter is you're just driving, right? Nobody wants to watch 5 hours of black tarmac as you're just driving through the middle of the night. That's boring for anybody, right? But that's also a time that, when you're doing a massive trip like that, that's time for the editors to kind of sit back and go through the footage that they've already taken that's a little earlier in the day, right? So everybody is always working. So, and a lot of people think, well, you're road tripping, there's downtime. There's never downtime, because if you're a camera person, if you're part of the crew, then you're either driving, or you are downloading footage, or you're looking through footage. You're making sure all the mics work. You're making sure all the cameras work. Some people are indeed sleeping because they're going to have to drive later on. So there's a lot of moving parts to this thing. So what did people miss in that first episode? Really not much, except Mike Musto driving through the darkness like this in a Big Green Suburban going, ah, shit, we still got another 4 hours. We still have another 3 hours.
Yeah, so that's where episode 1 ends, is kind of you guys are heading out to go get the new transmission, and not to, so let's talk a little bit of tease of episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
It basically jumps from time of, we're not going to show Mike driving through the dark forever and
right.
doing this thing, and then we're like, Elana, you got to drive. So episode 2, we show up at the transmission shop.
That's correct. Episode 2, we show up at a place called Silver Sport Transmissions. And Jeff Kaufman, who runs the place, that's when he explains to us that is the first modification of the first of many modifications that helped to bring this old Suburban into the 21st century and really transform it into something that could be used as a daily driver on today's roads.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to episode 2. Thanks for the time, Mike. We'll put this up on the show on the website and YouTube. And if you have any questions, because we're going to keep doing this, so if you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'll make sure to ask Mike, even if you're an episode behind. We'll hopefully get some extra stuff from the crowd. But before you go, one other question. There's no radio in the truck. What did you guys do for music? How did you figure that,
So there is a radio in the truck.
Okay.
If you look, there is an old, I think it's like an old Pioneer or an old Realistic cassette deck with these old school 1980 speakers that are literally bolted in the back. And it worked, but the nice part about doing a road trip with Elana is that we're friends. So we there was rarely a lull in conversation. Like, we would just talk and talk and talk. We talked about the production. We would talk about our own vehicles. You talk about just about everything, because you're in the car with that person for 22 days. And if you don't like that person, that's a big problem. We were super fortunate. We just get along splendidly. We had a great time. Music, and then here's the other thing about music. You can't play the radio while you're filming. Because
Right.
if you have music, you have to license that music. And that's what people don't understand. You can't just take music and just put, like, if Led Zeppelin comes on with a song, you can't just be like, that sounds great, I'm going to put it in the video. That's licensing. And if you don't license it, they will sue you. Music is very expensive, so you have to be careful when you use it. Going back to what you said about people posting questions on the video, post as many questions as you want. I promise I will answer probably all of them. So, which I'm looking forward to do. I love the interaction.
Yeah, great. Well, if you're still with us, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next Road to Improvement. In the meantime, visit Hemmings. Check out our classifieds and auctions where you can find your perfect road trip, Road to Improvement car, and also more videos, more content, and the next episode coming up soon. Thanks for the time, Mike.
Absolutely, Mike. Thanks, bud. Take care.